This is a very important topic, and all of us have this in our lives. And I want to tell you a real story of what happened to a person very close to me. It was the first time that I took her for Holy Confession. And she also is Greek Orthodox. She's one of my very close family members. And she had a lot of upheavals in her life. And she decided to go for confession. And I said to her, be careful, because I've seen this happen to many a person that I've taken to confession. I took her to my Holy Father Confessor. And I said, when you do that, you're going to realize that what you had in you is not going to be in you anymore. It's going to be out of you. And they're going to be so angry with you that you're going to start hearing voices outside your body that you noticed that you didn't know were in you. Okay? And I tried to explain that to her from other people's witnessing to me and what I've read in theological books. And I said, so don't be astonished if, for example, you're walking on the street and somebody that you don't even know or doesn't even know you comes behind you and starts bad-mouthing you. It's because the evil one is using them to attack you from the outside, because you've cleansed yourself inside, okay? And they don't want that. They want to get back in, they want to abuse you still. So I talked to her the day after her confession. I asked her what happened. She says, I immediately came home. I didn't see anybody on the street or anything, but you know what happened? She says, I was hearing voices outside of me. And she says, I could almost visually see them, that they were angry with me. And they said, you didn't tell him this, you didn't tell him that. And they were angry at me. And I realized, like my soul, she said, knew that these things were in me. And they came out of me when I confessed my sins. So every time you're sinning, you have one of these entities, they enter you through sinning. So that's what I wanted to tell you, that these entities are around even though we don't see them. Sometimes God allows us to see them. But before we usually see them, he allows us to see his angels so that we take fortitude and boldness, so that we grow spiritually and have knowledge, personal knowledge of what's around us, the spiritual world. So now we'll go into what the article says. Archons plant negative voices in your head to make you generate negative emotional energy, and you have to stop them. Now we know that this is nothing new. This is demonic influence. Sometimes when we feel nervous or upset or in fright or anxiety and stress, it comes from this type of an energy attack, and we have to know how to get ourselves out of that. One very nice way to say is, Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, keep the demon away from me that's bothering me now. Now, this is by Alexander Light on Humans Are Free, by Keyhole Journey. He says, I have received numerous emails from ordinary people asking me to explain that That's a Lie program I used to get rid of the voices I heard as a young woman. I did this on my own without the help of psychologists or psychiatrists or toxic drugs. For those of you who hear voices or are consumed by strong and obsessive negative thoughts, it's critical that you understand that the voices and persistent negative thoughts that plague you are not yours. They come from outside of you and do not belong to you. A couple of years ago, I translated a Christian Orthodox book written by a higher monk in Mount Athos, the holy mountains of Greece, from the writings of Saint John Chrysostom. He lived around the 4th century AD, and he was the bishop of Constantinople, of Istanbul, and he wrote many lectures and sermons. One of them had to do with what's called the devil and magic, and how thoughts come to us. And it's like a storm, when you see a wave coming one after the other. That's how these negative attacks come towards us, and we have to be able to weather the storm. It's a spiritual thing. Now, I translated that from Greek to English in order to make it available worldwide for the monastery to have income from that. Anyway, going back to this, they are not hallucinations, and you are not crazy. They are energy parasites and must turn your energy negative in order to utilize it as food. Their survival depends on draining, feeding off your negative energy. Not only that, it's just because they want us to stop having faith, and they install fear in us. And the reason that they dislike us so much is because these demons, the minions of the evil one, were the 10th hierarchy of angels of God in God's kingdom. They have been exiled, and they are never to go back. But the 10th hierarchy is to be refilled by only one entity, and that entity is human beings. After we pass from this phase of our life, our existence, we go towards an angelic phase, as is written in the Old Testament, New Testament. We are not man and woman, we're angels. And we take that position of the 10th hierarchy of angels. That's why they hate us so much. They can't go there. They can't go back there. So those who are to replace them are the ones that they have conflict with. So they use all these types of machinations, and we have to be aware of them so that we can protect ourselves. Now, they are not hallucinations, and you're not crazy. They are energy parasites and must turn your energy negative in order to utilize it as food, and their survival depends on draining and feeding off your negative energy. They're like psychic vampires type of thing. And when you hear a voice in your mind, you've always assumed that you're the originator of your own thoughts, but it's time to rethink that theory. They sit there whispering in your ear, or even use your dreams while you're sleeping in order to influence you through dreams. Anyway, these are the same negative spirits known by the Gnostics in ancient times as Archons and demons in today's biblical literature. And one big lie perpetrated by the establishment is all people are powerless to combat this disease. The truth is that this is not a disease. You're actually being attacked by a parasitic force, a spiritual force outside yourself that installs negative thoughts in your mind in order to generate negative emotional energy, which they absorb from you as food. And you have experienced for yourselves how completely drained and depressed you feel after being consumed by negative thoughts. The That's a Lie program, as a mental program designed to empower you, it's a program nothing and no one can take it away from you except you. I'm told by a clinical psychologist friend that this program has also worked to help victims of schizophrenia get rid of the voices they hear. Now, That's a Lie program and how it developed and how it works. I think the best way to explain how I was able to send away the negative spirits that plagued me for years is to tell you a story, the article says. It begins from 40 years ago, after I'd already spent several years researching the brain to learn what was wrong with me and how to fix it. My initial research centered on conventional science. What I learned about the mechanics of the brain was interesting, but did not help much as it only dealt with the material world. The voices that haunted me were not of that world. The story begins when a friend of mine was going on a trip around the world and would be gone for 4 months. She invited me to house sit for her and babysit her Yorkshire Terrier. I jumped at the chance to live in a beautiful home in Mill Valley, California, secluded from everyone else in San Francisco. At that time, I was struggling with how to forgive my ex and his new wife for taking my children from me and then poisoning their minds against me. The seclusion was a perfect opportunity for that effort. The day after I moved in and said bon voyage to my friend, I went to a bookstore to browse around when a book fell off the shelf, landing right at my feet. I picked it up and put it back on the shelf, but first I flipped through the pages. It was by Wayne Dwyer, called Your Erroneous Zones. I took it to the bookstore coffee shop to browse through before deciding whether to buy it or not, and open it to a random page which read, "No one can make you feel good or bad. That is your choice. You have the ability to control your thoughts, and only you can make yourself happy." I closed the book and whispered, "Oh my God, I did not know that." This was a pivotal moment for me that changed the course of my life. I took the book back to my friend's house and began reading every page. Many times I put it down to observe my thoughts. I wondered, who is it observing my thoughts? What are thoughts, and where do thoughts come from? Where do thoughts go once we think them? How do I control them if I'm able to step back and watch them appear out of nowhere, realizing they are not coming from me, the watcher? At the end of 4 months, my friend returned from her world tour, and she and I had a lot to discuss. First, she had to show me all her slides of places she visited and people she met. She looked vibrant and happy. At supper, I told her about the book. Did you know that you can control your thoughts and that no one can make you feel one way or another unless you allow it? I asked. She did not know this either, and through her childhood had been quite normal. She loved the idea. She asked if I would leave the book with her, and as I drove back to San Francisco to find a new apartment, I continued having revelations about my own mind. In my new apartment, I spent time alone, plowing through many texts about the brain and mind before I came across a book by Robert Monroe called Journeys Out of the Body. I practiced some of the experience the book recommended. They didn't cause me to travel out of my body, but did have another astounding effect. I began to see flashes of memory from the first 13 years of my life, of which I had previously had no recall. I didn't understand them at first until a floodgate opened and all the memories rushed in suddenly. I was overwhelmed and could not believe the things I was remembering. I felt like a deer in the headlights, understanding but too horrified to process everything all at once. Flashes of my father being enamored with Japanese torture methods and using me as his lab rat from age 3 to 6 surged into my mind, glimpsing of spending 6 months in a juvenile detention center at age 6.5 and spending 2 weeks in solitary confinement appeared. Finally, flickers of spending 5 years in a Catholic orphanage where I and 500 other girls suffered stunning emotional and physical abuse until I was released at age 13. Astonished by these memories that were coming up, I sat in the middle of my living room like a stone sculpture. When the movie, quote-unquote, of my memory stopped, I whispered to an empty room, "That's what's wrong. I got brainwashed. What do I do now?" End quote. The memory dump revealed that I was mind-controlled through physical and emotional torture. What was so strange is that after the age of 13, my memories of my father are great. He taught me to hunt and fish and to be self-sufficient in the wilderness. He taught me advanced mathematics and so much more. I grew up loving math and science, and it seemed natural that I would study civil engineering as a career path. From everything I had read, I realized that early childhood experiences are embedded into the subconscious as truth. My subconscious truth was first you get tortured by a man, and then the man treats your cuts, bruises, wounds, and then the man cuddles you and rocks you to sleep, and then you feel loved and safe again. This was exactly the scenario I had been playing out in life without ever knowing why. Never would I have understood this had that dam not broken wide open when it did, and for that I'm grateful. On top of that conditioned behavior, the voices kept telling me I was worthless in this world, but now with my memory returning, I knew differently. I knew that the horrible things that were done to me were not things I had caused, chosen, or deserved. So not only did I need to figure out how overcome being brainwashed to fix my mind, I needed to fix out how to get rid of the voices that plagued me and continued to tell me horrible things about myself. When I got back to work after the weekend, my boss called me into his office. "Sherry," he said, "how would you like to learn computer programming?" I said, "Sounds interesting. What's going on?" He leaned back in his chair. "We just got awarded a contract to develop a computerized tracking system for a major water district. I thought you would be the best candidate to head up the project." "Sure," I said. "I'd love the challenge. When do we start?" "Tomorrow," he said. Over the next months, I learned computer programming. 15 months later, I had written the computer code for the Water District's tracking system, and they loved it. More than that, I saw a remarkable similarity between how computers process information and how our brains process information, each running on a program that's inserted by an outside programmer. While the computer program operates by its software code, the brain program operates by electrical impulses traveling specific synaptic paths. I wondered if I could write a mental program that would not only tackle the negative thoughts, hence the voices that were hounding me, but also eliminate or deprogram the brainwash conditioning that was exacerbating the misery in my life. My theory was to write a mental program and train myself to use that new program more than the existing one until the new program became automatic and the existing program atrophied, weakened to the point it could no longer perform, even if I tried. In other words, to rewire my brain. I first tried to edit the code in my brain, but it didn't work. It was way too complicated to remember while in the throes of unconscious conditioned responses set off by life events or during Archon attacks. I needed to think of something easier, something I could remember while in the midst of older programming being triggered by the world around me. I now knew that all the negative things I'd been taught about myself by my parents, the juvenile detention center, the Catholic orphanage, public schools, and society in general, with regard to who I really was, were not true. It was all lies. I was not a bad and evil person destined to go to hell. I was not a crazy person. I was not a selfish person. I did not hate myself or anyone else. I was not born to hate life, nor was I born to sin. I was not stupid, going nowhere. I was not a bad mother. None of those things were true. And yet, prior to running the new program, I heard this as truth by the voices that felt this as true by the mental conditioning all day and all night long. Because of that, I had seen bewildered surprises in the faces of the eyes of others as I watched myself overreacting to their innocent words and walking away in embarrassment. All I could do was cringe at my overreactions later when I was alone. I vowed that if it took me my whole life, I would find a way to fix this. After some trial and error, I designed a mental program called That's a Lie. I actually have Wayne Dwyer to thank for initially setting me on this right track by pointing out that we do have a choice about the way we think. In other words, we have the ability to take control over our own mind. I also give credit to many thanks to the universe for the synchronicity of dropping Wayne's book at my feet and opening the door that allowed me to learn computer programming. It was exactly what I needed to get started on the path towards fixing the root problem so that I could begin to heal. The That's a Lie program worked perfectly on eliminating the brainwashing conditions, allowing me the mental space I required to become who I wanted to be instead of mindlessly being what others programmed into me. My theory had worked. Once I broke through and conquered the brainwashing effects, I was surprised to find that much of what had been forcefully programmed into my brain as a child was still being utilized by the spirit parasites against me. I was still receiving negative thoughts and messages, which sounded exactly like my own thoughts. The prodding and poking, the suggestions, even demands coming from them were beyond anything I could imagine thinking, much less doing. If these thoughts were not coming from me and I could sit back and watch them flow through me and feel disgusted by them, then they were from an outside source. Researching this, I learned about the Archons of ancient times. Quote, in 1947, texts were found in clay jars in Nag Hammadi in Egypt, and on these texts was a story of that the Nag Hammadi people 2,000 years ago thought the world was about, what they thought the world was about. In Gnostic belief, Archons were planetary rulers and guardians of the spiritual planes. The Archons were associated with the 7 visible planets and perceived as agents of the demiurge, predatory beings who inhabit spiritual awakening by convincing humanity of a false reality, forces of sin and temptation. They influence the way you perceive the world, not the world itself. The primary power in the world we inhabit is the indwelling divinity of the planet, the Gaian intelligence called Sophia by the Gnostics, meaning wisdom. If you are aligned to the Gaian intelligence, you do not see the world as a place of fear and predation, but of beauty, bounty, and magic. This confirmed that I was not losing my mind, but instead being attacked by negative, parasitic spirits, beings that are very real. Now it was time to apply the new program to see if it would work on the Archon demon voices that just would not leave me alone. Once I actually applied the principles and stuck to them, the program worked just as effectively on them as it did on the brainwashing. In essence, this program denies the entities their battle. You are armed with the truth that these parasites tell lies about who you are, lots of them. But not engaging and denying them the battle, you are not generating any food for them. By not engaging and denying them the battle, you are not generating any food for them. They must have negative energy to survive. They cannot generate it themselves. They have no power of their own. If they cannot evoke negative emotions from you, they have no choice but to leave or starve to death. If you are persistent, they have to leave. Here's how I work the That's a Lie program. Every time I caught myself having a knee-jerk overreaction to a thought or feeling, I would say, that's a lie. An example, one of many, someone might say, you are just a stupid idiot. Instead of allowing the old program to run, that would cause me to agree and feel low self-esteem or get angry about what the person said. I would consciously run a new program and say to myself, that's a lie. My logical mind already knew I was not stupid, but my subconscious mind needed the new program to be repeatedly run in order to create new neural pathways in a different recording. How in the world could I work as a civil engineer and run an international human rights organization and run my life in spite of all the stuff that had happened to me if I were not stupid? The messages these entities were inserting into my mind were insane. The truth is that each of us is born as a pure being, each with a pure and sovereign spirit, each with the potential to live a happy, productive, healthy, and prosperous life. By the time the world gets through with us, running us through the mill and negatively programming us, we forget all of this. For some of us, the process of torturous, as was mine. For others, the process is like everyday hearing and seeing, witnessing people say and do things that are nasty, egotistical, and completely contrary to the purity they were when they first arrived here in the flesh. Thus, our subconscious records these things as truth when it's all lies. With our perception of the world influenced by these lies, we become the perfect feeding ground for these parasites to infest, unless we call it what it is. Run the That's a Lie program every single time you have a negative thought about yourself, even if this means you have to stop in mid-sentence for a redo. Do this until the program becomes automatic. When you do this, you will begin to see profound advances in communicating with your brilliant higher self. When this becomes automatic, you no longer have to think about it because the old program has atrophied and no longer runs. The software is corrupted. It cannot fire electric impulses along those old pathways because it can't find them. The new doors and new ways of being and thinking will open to you, and the voices, the Archons, the demon spirits are repelled by positive energy, so they will stay at bay. They may periodically return to test the waters, but you will be able to recognize their foul presence and literally shrug them off with that's a lie. It's not an overnight fix, but it can be a permanent one, and it's not easy and will take time, effort, and diligence. For me, it also took stubbornness and tenacity. Many people just don't want to do the work. For those not willing to do the work needed, the program will fail, and they will continue to be plagued with negativity and irrational behavior triggered by negative spirits. This worked for me, and provided there is no organic damage to the brain, it can work for anyone who utilizes it consciously and diligently. There is no compromise. You are not the awful person these entities tell you that you are. Those are lies. Your subconscious mind needs to know that what it recorded in your early years is false information. It learns this by repetition. Considering the alternative of not making the effort, have no doubt that these beings are energy parasites and will feed off of you until you change the programming in your subconscious mind, or until you are not around anymore. Now, they need you for negative energy to survive. They don't give a damn about you other than as their energy food source. And once you have worked this program as described above and absolutely know how this works, you will be able to teach others the same thing with great ease. This method is not to be found in textbooks, but should be. This is on The Humans Are Free by Alexander Light and by Keyhole Journey WordPress. If you'd like to join me on my Patreon account, you will hear content not covered by mainstream media. These riveting stories will be based on my research, and I will state my opinions and give my personal insight on diverse and controversial subjects and world events not covered by mainstream media, and not supported by YouTube guidelines. So whatever I have on my Patreon, most of those will not be on my YouTube channel. Please consider becoming a member today. More of the most significant and important videos will be on my Patreon channel. Your support helps me to continue my research and keeps this YouTube channel alive. And we depend on your support, your generous charity, because we help economically challenged families here in Athens, Greece, in Kapota, and we also help the young generation with university tuition and the community around our church. Thank you.